Hey guys, this is my work 10 years ago, and this is my work as of now. So you can see that there is quite a bit of difference. So what changed, right? So to put it in one word, it's the foundations. When I first started to learn art, I completely ignored the fundamentals. I just jumped straight into anatomy, and that's why my art looks so bad, 10 years ago. But then I figured out, like, okay, so I need to focus on my foundations. It was actually pointed out to me. So I just, started scouring the internet, looking for, the best resources that I could, use to get better at the fundamentals. So what I did, I put all the resources that I used so far and consolidated them into this video so that you can go check them out and help improve your own foundations. If you want to get better at your art, it's foundations is the only way. You have to get better at your foundations. So yeah, hopefully all the resources you hear will be useful, and yeah, let's jump straight into the video. Okay, so the first thing that you should be learning when you're starting out in art is like basic form drawing. So basically, like we are calibrated since the day we are born to see everything as objects. So like I have a bottle in front of me, it's a bottle. We look everything objectively to what it is. Toy is a toy, a bottle is a bottle, a car is a car. Basic form drawing, you're basically trying to simplify every single thing that you see around you into basic primitive shapes. It can be like a sphere, so it can be like a cylinder, it can be like a cube. So a water bottle is no longer a water bottle, it's like a cylinder with a cap on it. That's the idea. So this is the most important skill that you need to learn. Here are some few books and resources that might definitely help me in my journey learning this. So the first book that I'm going to be talking about is Scott Robertson's How to Draw. So like the book goes through a lot of the basic foundations of drawing, like how do you draw cylinders, how do you draw spheres, how do you draw a box in perfect perspective in any angle. So once you're comfortable doing this, then he moves on to how you can use this idea of drawing like these basic stuff like spheres and boxes, and you can change them into like real world objects like a box. How do we change a box into a car, for example? So those are the ideas that you'll be going through this book. You want to draw things from your imagination, not just draw from Pinterest pictures all day, and you have ideas in your head that you want to put on paper. You have fantasy world, fantasy characters, that don't exist on Pinterest. They only exist in your head. How do you put them on paper? You first start simplifying them. So that's what this book teaches you. So yeah, highly recommend this book. The next book that I wanted to talk about, for basic form drawing is, Andrew Loomis's Fun with a Pencil. Cool kid can use the book. Like if you're like a 10-year-old kid who wants to learn to draw, I would recommend this book. Again, it's the same idea. How do we simplify the world around us using, simple cubes and spheres and, boxes? Because this is exactly, this is the most foundational skill for any artist or designer. So yeah, I strongly recommend this book. Okay, so another important, resource that has been really, really useful in strengthening my foundation is, the Proko, drawing course. Proko is like again another goat. Most of us know him, like he's this master artist who's famous for his anatomy tutorials that he's put on for free on YouTube. So if you need a video course that covers basically every single thing about the foundation of art, a one-stop solution to learn the foundations. You want to learn about line, you want to learn about perspective, shape, light, and composition. This is where you start. So I would say this is for any beginner. It's a good investment. It's a good place to start. And you can also use these books as supplementary reading. So when you're watching the video course from Proko, And as he's teaching you these concepts about perspective and line and all that, you can use the books as well as supplementation. Like, it's almost impossible for a single artist to teach you everything. So it's always best to learn from multiple teachers. So that's the best way to learn it. So don't just learn from one teacher. Learn from as many people as possible. So yeah, the video course is awesome. I strongly recommend it. Do check it out. Yeah. Okay, so the next section that I wanted to talk about was perspective, right? We need perspective is that now you want to start putting these simple objects into space. So like, how do I draw a cylinder? How do I draw 5 cylinders? Like, with one closer to me and another, 10 feet away from me. So how do we show space? Like, how do we show depth? This is what perspective is all about. So yeah, hopefully again, these books and resources will help you out. Yeah, okay. So the first book that I wanted to talk about when it comes to perspective is Space Drawing by Dong Ho Kim. So it's actually one of the best books that you can get on the topic of perspective. He uses simple drawings to explain, each concept, like what is, the vanishing line, what is the horizontal line, what is the vanishing point, what is the horizon line, and and even he goes through what is 5-point perspective. And I know 5-point is something a lot of us are interested in. So 5-point is pretty fun to do, and the book also goes through how you can go about drawing in 5-point perspective. So it's like a very simple book, very easy to learn, very easy to use. So I strongly recommend this one for perspective. Okay, and the next book that I want to talk about is Perspective Made Easy by Ernest Norling. The book is pretty old. It's a pretty old book. I think you can even find it free online. But again, the concepts that are shared in this book is quite timeless. Like, I use it till this day, and this is a book that I used 10 years ago. And it's a super good book to get started with perspective. It'll actually help you start drawing, basic environments and all that. So environments, again, is you need perspective to draw environments. So again, this is another extremely high quality book that I strongly recommend. Yeah. Okay, so the next book that I wanted to talk about was Frame Perspective by Marcos Mestre. Frame ink books are legendary. So Perspective is, he has actually 2 books on perspective, and Frame Perspective 1 is where he discusses the basic concepts of perspective. And if you really want to solidify and become a master in perspective, I really recommend this book. He actually goes a lot more deeper, on why these concepts work, right? So we have the horizontal line and, vanishing points and all that. So why do they work? How do they work? And so the more deeper you have an understanding of them, the more you can actually play with them. So, the more you can start creating more complex scenes. So yeah, another huge recommend for the perspective section. And I also highly recommend you check out Marcos's other books as well. So every book that he's put down is so damn good. There's so much information there. So yeah, that's another big thumbs up. Okay, so the next book that I wanted to talk about in perspective is Successful Drawing by Andrew Loomis. Successful Drawing is actually a book that I would say is targeted at the intermediate artists. So if you're already familiar on some level with the basic foundations like perspective and all that, and you want to take it to the next level, I think this book is for you. So yeah, this is another huge recommendation for sure. Okay, so the next one is everyone's favorite topic, figure drawing. Anatomy. Most of the art that we make can't escape it, because most of the ideas that we have involves drawing a person or a humanoid or an animal or whatever. So that's why it's super important to learn. So yeah, let's jump into it. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to talk about was let me just pull up the book. So yeah, the first one I want to talk about is Michael Hampton. One reason why I love Michael Hampton's teaching is that he teaches anatomy, again, using the idea of simplified forms. So we already in the first section we talked about the basic forms, right? Like we need to simplify everything into a cylinder, into a box, and all that. So the way Michael teaches anatomy is that he simplifies each muscle of the body into a simple basic form. So the deltoid could be like something like a pizza-shaped box, for example. So he uses these simple ideas of a sphere, a box, to break down the human figure, which I think is an extremely effective way to learn to draw the human body. Highly recommended. Awesome book. So yeah, on to the next one. And the next book that I wanted to talk about is Steve Huston, Figure Drawing for Artists. So this is the book. Gesture is an idea that's not easy to understand. Like it wasn't easy for me to understand, and my figure drawings look very robotic, like they didn't look alive basically. So if your drawings are not looking alive, your figures are not looking alive, it usually means the gesture is not working. So I never understood the idea before, but once I took Steve Huston's course in New Masters Academy, it completely revolutionized, changed the way that I draw the human figure. So he has, Michael Hampton had this structural approach. He simplified, everything into a basic form, and which is excellent, which is what you should be doing. Steve takes that and combines it with, gesture, more, he teaches you a more effective way to combine structure and gesture together, in a much more effective way. Hugely recommend, taking his course in New Masters Academy. And I also do recommend getting his book. So he does have his own book. So it again goes through his ideas on how he approaches anatomy, how he combines gesture and structure. I strongly recommend that you take a look at his work. And on to the next one. Okay, so the next one is Proko's, anatomy tutorials. If you want to go deeper into the workings of the body, like, what each muscle does, how it works, why it works, Proko's tutorials go in depth about where each muscle attaches to where, how it works, how they are named. So his, anatomy tutorials are legendary, and I think it's the best resource to learn anatomy. Free videos alone are packed with so much information. So I strongly recommend that you just check and subscribe to his YouTube channel, because it's one of probably the best resource on anatomy that's out there for sure. Yeah. Okay, so the first course that I wanted to talk about for the lighting section is, Sam Nielson's course on schoolism. It's called The Fundamentals of Lighting. So this course was actually the most foundational for me to understand the concepts of, light. How exactly light behaves around, 3D forms, like what, how does it bounce? What is bounce light? What is reflected light, what is ambient occlusion, and all those things. So this is actually quite a detailed course. It goes into painting complex materials, like, so how does light behave around glass. So we are going to start talking about materials. So first we learn to draw them, and when it comes to lighting, each thing has a different material, right? My skin behaves differently under light, glass behaves differently under light, plastic, transparent objects like these behave differently under light. So how do we understand these differences so that we could start painting them efficiently, so that we can make everything look realistic. So he actually goes into detail about each different object that you can encounter in the real world: hair, fruits, food. So we can see that everything around us has a lot of different materials to it. How do we paint metal? So it basically pretty much covers everything. So this is an extremely high value course. I strongly recommend that you check this out. So that you'll have a solid understanding of how materials work and how you can paint them, so you can start making things look realistic. The next course that I want to talk about for the rendering section is like, another course by the master Steve Huston in New Masters Academy. His, painting course. I think it's the basics of painting course, basically. He breaks down, the basic foundations of painting. Line, shape, edges, color. So everything that he taught me in this course was like, I still use everything that he taught me. I still use it every single day. How to work with color, how to work with light, how do paint simple objects like a cylinder on a box. We know how to draw them, but how do we paint them? So once again, he breaks down, master artist work. He takes the work of, master artists from our past and breaks down those paintings, like why they work, how do they do their value composition and all that. So I would like, if you want to understand the basics of painting, I think this is an extremely high value course. So he uses oil painting as the medium in this course. If you're a digital artist who uses a Wacom tablet, that's perfectly fine. The skills are always transferable. The concepts that he teaches applies to any medium that you're working with, be it like a digital medium like a Wacom tablet or watercolor or oil paints. Doesn't matter. The ideas that he's going to be sharing is all foundational. So yeah, this is another extremely important resource in my journey, and I strongly recommend it. The next course that I wanted to talk about was, Dorian Iten's the shading course. So this is another course that was extremely useful for me to invent light from my imagination. What I mean by that is like, so you have this scene inside your head, a completely fantasy scene that doesn't exist in the real world. And so you're basically, picturing your own worlds and characters and all that. How do we light them? How do we light them when we don't have a reference? Like, when you want to light something a very specific way, but you have no photographic reference. In that case, you have to understand how light works, right? So once again, this course is like a very well, put a laid out course. He goes into once again the basics of lighting, like how reflected light works, how bounce light works, and he shares some important concepts like the cosine law. And so the next book that I want to talk about was James Durning, his book on color and light. I think it's another standard book in every artist's library. So in this book, he again shares the concepts that we talked about, right? So again, the basic forms, basic light, reflected light, and the one good thing I loved about this book is like he talks about how to paint certain lighting conditions. So for example, maybe how does light work in an evening environment? So how does it work during a daytime environment? What are some shortcuts, or like what are some ideas that we have to keep in mind when painting certain lighting situations, like very specific lighting situations like nighttime, or an interior environment. So he also has a YouTube channel where he does like a lot of live drawing demos, which actually gave me some insight of how to approach a drawing when drawing from life. So his YouTube channel is also like a gold mine of information. So like I highly recommend that you subscribe. And his book, I strongly recommend that you get it. Super useful book for sure. Okay, the next book that I wanted to talk about is, Color and Light by 3D Total. It actually has like 4 different artists, talking about how they approach light. It's actually an extremely detailed book. Like, it goes through a lot of information. And if you want to become a master of light, if you really want to go deep into understanding how reflections work, how, light behaves around different forms, how to paint different materials, I couldn't recommend a better book, because it's packed with a lot of dense information, and it really helped me understand certain concepts which I didn't have much clarity before. So it's I couldn't recommend it enough. It's one of the best books that I have. It's a large book, and it's packed with a lot of information, so again you'll have to bite a little through it. But again, once again, it has so much information, and I strongly recommend this one for sure. Yeah. Okay. So the next resource that I want to recommend for lighting and rendering is, Marco Bucci's YouTube channel. His YouTube channel, I think, is one of the best YouTube art channels out there. So especially his videos on, the concept of ambient occlusion. I think it's one of the most, useful videos on the subject. The way he explains it, and his method of teaching is very, very, fun. And it's very easy to understand, which I think is like what makes a good teacher. Is that how you explain it in your own way, right? So I think he has a very fun way of teaching things. And his painting course, I think on CGMA, is one of the most enlightening courses for me. It really helped me understand, how light works, again, how painting works. So I strongly recommend checking out his YouTube channel. He gives out so much information for free on his YouTube. He also has courses on, Aaron Blaze's website, thecreatureartteacher.com. So, and also on Proko.com. So, and he has his own website where he also has several courses, which you can check it out. So yeah, I strongly recommend his YouTube channel and, everything that he puts up for sure. Yeah. Okay. So tell me if this has ever happened to you. So like you think about an idea for a painting, and you paint it, you put it on paper, and as you're painting it, as you're like working through it halfway, you kind of feel that what you're drawing is not at all what you imagine, and once the painting is finally done, the image turns out to be meh. Like you don't where you don't feel that same energy happiness that you felt when you first came up with the idea. The image doesn't resonate with you, or maybe it just resonates with you, and when it's shared to your friends, they don't, get anything out of it. They're like, again, their response is made, like, yeah, it's good. So why does this keep happening? I mean, it can happen for a lot of reasons, taste and so many variables, right? But one main reason why this happens, especially when you're a beginner, is because of composition. There's so many elements that you can use to tell a story, be it color, shape, or line, or whatever. So you can already tell that this is going to be like a huge topic, and it is, and it's a very important topic. So yeah, let's jump into it. Let's see what resources can help you get better at composition. Yeah. Okay, so the first book that I want to talk about when it comes to composition is this one. It's called Vision by Hans P. Bacher and Sanatan Suryavanshi. And I have to say, I make it a point to read this book every once or twice every single year, because it's so well designed. The book is so well designed, and the information that they share is like extremely useful. Learning art is essentially a language, right? So like, just like how I'm using my voice, using my words to communicate with you now, art is another way for me to communicate with you. So on some level, you can only express yourself, express a certain feeling that you're having using art, using music. And that's what composition does. It takes art and turns it into a language. Now you're using art your drawing skills as a language to communicate with, people. And this book, this is how, it lays out everything. So it observes art as a, communication tool, and how we can use these tools to communicate, efficiently to our audience. So it talks about line, it talks about color, it talks about shape, and how we can use each of these elements, to tell a story. Quoted book for me for sure. On to the next one. And the next book that I want to talk about is Frame Ink by the master, Marcos Mito. Marcos teaches his own way of, composition, like how it works, why it works, and like how to do lighting thumbnails. This is a very important skill to have when you're making images, and how lighting can be used as a tool to to tell any sort of story. So once again, we already talked about this, right? So if it's a horror movie, it's going to have a certain set of lighting. If it's going to be like a children's story, it's going to have a certain set of lighting. it also targets a certain audience. It targets people who want to work in films, who want to work in animation. So you have to go deeper. So it's not just about learning to draw. You have to understand how film cameras work. Because what you're drawing is going to be translated into a movie, then you need to understand how cameras work. So there are certain limitations to what a camera can do. So to what a camera lens can do, how much of the image it can capture. So you have to keep this in mind when you're doing storyboards, when you're creating compositions and all that. And this book really does a great job of explaining these concepts, and it's another huge recommended book by me. Yeah, definitely check it out. Okay, so the next resource that I wanted to share on the topic of composition is from the master Bill Perkins. So he has done a long video course called Composition Bootcamp in the New Manchester Academy website. They're very dense and very large course, and it's packed with a lot of information. And that information which I'm using it every single day is so knowledgeable, and the way he breaks down composition, into what are major keys, what are minor keys, how does notan work, how does chiaroscuro work, and these are concepts that I had no idea before. But once I took the course, and these are concepts that you need to understand and need to learn as an artist. So he explained these concepts very beautifully, and he does a lot of demos on how to approach these concepts. So if you have an idea in mind about a story that you want to paint or an idea for a painting, how do you start that? How do you do thumbnails for that painting? How do you set up color for that painting? How do you set up the light? To make sure that by the time you're done with the painting, it's as that you intended. Packed with a lot of information. I strongly recommend this one for sure. Yeah. So so the next book that I want to talk about on the topic of composition is Creative Illustration by Andrew Loomis. Creative Illustration, I would say, is one of the most overlooked books on composition, I would say. In this book, he teaches you how to work with grids. So how do you divide the white space, to make a more compelling and, beautiful composition. How do we work with rhythms? So this is another obvious, I learned so much from this book. And even for my graphic design projects, I use the Loomis grid basically to design my compositions, and it's so wonderful. The ideas that he discussed about color, how to tell a story, how to use light. Again, each artist has their own different way of explaining these things, as I mentioned earlier. And this book is no different. It's an extremely valuable book. I strongly recommend it for sure. Okay, so the next book that I wanted to recommend on the topic of composition, is Mastering Composition by Ian Roberts. The book goes into once again, right? So it goes into how do you approach composition when you're starting a painting? How do you have flow in your flow in your image, rhythm in your image? How do you work with shapes? Shape is actually the core of all compositions. If you need to make your paintings look interesting, they need to have interesting shapes. It's all a play between light and dark shapes. That's what a painting or any visual image, that's what it's doing. It's playing with different light and dark shapes. So you need to start understanding things in a much more abstract level. So this book actually goes deeper into that idea, how exactly do we do that, and how do we make sure that what we are painting is engaging and beautiful, that that catches the viewer's eye. So it's he uses oil paint as his core medium. His work is beautiful, and he has his own YouTube channel where he shares so much useful information. The YouTube channel is again one of the best art channels out there on YouTube, so I strongly recommend it as well. So the next artist that I wanted to talk about on the subject of composition is Nathan Fowkes. He has a course on schoolism called Designing with Color and Light. I strongly recommend that you take it, because Nathan is an industry veteran. He has been working in the animation industry for so long and working on some top class movies. Puss in Boots and a lot of the DreamWorks films. So I strongly recommend that you look into his work. And the way he explains color and light is something I think it's core to my understanding of color and light. So it's the course has a lot of demos, and he teaches you ways on how to approach color, especially value on some level. Once you understand value, next you need to worry about color. How do we make sure that the color palette that we're working with is going to be interesting to the viewer? How do we make sure that the color that we're using is telling our story effectively? So he goes through all this. It's an awesome course. I strongly recommend you follow him online, follow his Instagram, follow his YouTube, and he puts his course on Schoolism. So I strongly recommend that you check it out. Yeah. Okay, so far we talked about basic form drawing, perspective, figure drawing, composition. Now that you have a solid understanding of the foundations of art, what is the next thing? So the next thing is of course design. If you're planning on becoming a concept artist, or a vehicle designer, a character designer, then you need to understand design. The next step is to actually use those art skills to build your world, basically. So let's say you have an idea for a video game or a movie, a fantasy movie. How exactly will that world work? Or what does the architecture look like? What do the people look like? How are they dressed? And you can see where I'm going with the world building, right? So basically every single thing needs to be designed. So your ability to get a job as a concept artist or a vehicle designer strongly depends upon your understanding and your ability to create really appealing and effective designs. There are some resources that I think would definitely help. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so the first resource that I wanted to talk about is the Ctrl Paint website. The website is one of the most valuable free resources that you can find on the internet, run by the artist Kohr. The website is one of the most valuable free resources that you can find on the internet. The whole website, he actually has a free library of tutorials where anyone can learn to draw, basically. It's a great series, and there also is a paid section where he offers specialized courses on very specific topics, for example on design. He also has courses on perspective and shading, but he has one on design which I think is super useful. He teaches you. He's a concept artist himself, so he teaches how he approaches design on a day-to-day basis on the projects that he works on. The techniques that he shared is something that I use till today. It's extremely useful. So it's top on my list. So strongly recommend it. Yeah, go check it out. Okay, so the next resource that I wanted to talk about when it comes to design is the Skillfull Huntsman by the publisher Design Studio Press. So this is actually a very interesting book. I haven't seen a book like this. Robertson, the GOAT, we already talked about his book, How to Draw. So what he did was he came up with an idea for this book. There's the story, The Skillfull Huntsman. It's a very famous story. You can actually read it online. And what he wanted to do, he wanted to create a book based on design. So let's say, he just picked three of his students. All three of them were legends in the concept art industry now. So he chose those three people and he gave them the story of the Skillfull Huntsman. And he wanted these three people to come up with their own designs for the story. Maybe the story is set, one can design the same story set in a sci-fi timeline. Maybe another can, design the same story in a more, fantasy, Lord of the Rings kind of ish timeline. And someone else, the third one, can actually design the same story in a different timeline. So that way we'll end up with three different designs for the same story. So this is very interesting, and all these three people in the book, they talk about how they approach their design, how they approach the design for the characters, the props, and the world and so on. You can already understand like why a book like this would be so insightful. You gain a lot of. It's not necessarily like a how-to book. It's more like you're like sitting. You're the bee on the. You're the fly on the wall basically. You're looking at how these people are working, how they're approaching their designs and how their thought process works. So it's an absolutely awesome book on design. So yeah, strongly recommend this. Okay, so the next book that I wanted to talk about when it comes to making good design is Design Basics by Stephen Pentak and David A. Lauer. So what I liked about this book is it's a good introduction to the principles of design. Like what are the principles of design? Like how unity works, how balance works, how contrast works. And these are principles that are used across all sorts of visual mediums, from graphic design, painting, movies, etc. So this book, and the good thing about this book is that it just doesn't talk about paintings, it talks about everything. It talks about photography, what makes a good photograph, what makes a good poster, what makes a good film, what makes an interesting painting. And you can understand that all these are visual mediums and they're all working under the same design principles. So this book is an excellent book which gives out a lot of examples of how the design principles work, how to break down master paintings, and how to study photography and all that. Yeah, highly recommend this one. On to the next one. Okay, so the next book that I want to talk about when it comes to design is the Foundation Patreon courses by John Park. He, along with I think a couple of his friends, they started an online training platform called the Foundation, where they invite different artists from different specializations to create courses on the subject. For example, if you want to learn vehicle design, there's an artist who makes a course on makes a tutorial on vehicle design. So they're targeted to be like not more than 40-60 minutes long, and so it's actually extremely useful that the tutorials cover a diverse range of subjects like so how to study buildings, how to do animal anatomy, how to do character designs and all that. So it covers a wide range of topics from the basics to to advanced skill sets. So I learned a lot from these tutorials, and I strongly recommend that you check them out. If you want to get better at design, I think this is a damn good resource for sure. So yeah, hope you found the video useful. So like I tried to put together all the books and resources that I used to get where I am with my art so far, and they have been like incredibly useful. So I wouldn't be the artist that I am without these resources basically. So yeah, hope you found everything useful, and if you have any additional resources that you would like to add that I missed and it has really helped you a lot, please do share in the comments so that every one of us can benefit from it. Yeah, so that's it from me, guys. Take care, happy new year, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.